Congressman, always great to have you on. I have so much to discuss. Let's get right to it. Now, you are, of course, former military, so I've got to ask you about Signalgate, a couple of different things. We all know the story, so I don't have to, go into it too deeply because everybody knows. But from your perspective as someone who is former military, what is your response to two things? Number one, the fact that, Pete Hegseth and Mike Waltz, et cetera, were using Signal as a way to communicate with everyone. That's number one. And number two, do you think the Democrats, this is a loaded question, but do you think the Democrats are looking rather desperate to try to make this a very big deal when the bigger point is that this was an extremely successful mission?
Well, look, the Democrats are going to do nothing but try to tear this guy down. That's their only hope. They don't have a vision for what they want to accomplish. Their vision was woke and was, just a disparate, socialistic, and for some of them, like AOC, if you really get into what she says, communistic economic policy. So, they have no. Look at Afghanistan. Look at all the terrible foreign policy actions of the former president. They have nothing to hang their hat on. So the only thing, the best hope they've got, is to find mistakes made by the administration and seize upon that. So that we're going to see that for the rest of the time President Trump's in office.
I got to tell you, one of the things that I thought was interesting, and then we'll move on because some of this is inside the Beltway politics. But I did find this interesting, what Hakeem Jeffries said. Congressman, you and I both know that the Democrats, we just talked about it, they are under fire for not fighting the Republicans enough. And this is what Minority Leader Jeffries had to say.
We're in the middle of a fight right now as it relates to Pete Hegseth. He needs to resign or be fired by Donald Trump. We've made that clear across the caucus. And Democrats, I think, showed fight in the Senate hearing on Tuesday and in the House hearing on Wednesday.
Congressman, when you look at how the Democrats are behaving in the House of Representatives, do you feel like, because that's Hakeem Jeffries obviously trying to convince folks that they are fighting against Donald Trump, how would you characterize what's happening in the House right now?
Well, again, Jeffries and crew, they don't have a path forward for themselves until they redefine their party, and so all they can do is, we're fighting. But remember, probably 30% of the Democrat Party their ideology is what just failed them in the election, and so it's compelling. Those are the guys that are going to Democrat town halls and saying, you're not fighting hard enough. Well, look, that philosophy was just rejected by the vast majority of Americans who woke up and saw where the Democrat Party was really going. They're going to clearly continue to have this tension in their ranks until enough of them realize that is a failed ideology, whether you're in Venezuela, the Soviet Union, or Cuba.
Congressman Mark Green is joining us. Congressman, I want to play something for you. This is something that Tim Burchett, he posted yesterday, and I want to get your response to it because there are some worries from within the Republican Party. This is what the congressman had to say. Tim Burchett.
We're not fulfilling President Trump's DOGE agenda. Remember this, Congress, Republicans, we got about a 3-person lead maybe, and I'm sure I'll catch hell for saying this, but we didn't. Our approval rating is right above those people that are scraping Teslas right now, and we're running around the country hollering about all this stuff, and Trump won overwhelmingly because of the DOGE agenda, cutting this stuff out, and we're not cutting nothing out. So, yeah, I'm disgusted. Anyway, hopefully we'll do better next week.
All right. So never one to mince words. That is Congressman Tim Burchett. Congressman Mark Green. Similar accusations have been made from inside the conservative movement. What say you?
Yeah, we're not cutting enough, but we've got a 2 or 3 seat majority right now, and I'll take some cuts. I think they're looking at several $100 billion that are going to be cut in the reconciliation if they can get done what they're. And I sit in the chairman's meetings. Tim probably misses those, but I'm hearing what the overall direction of our desires of the leadership is, and they've got several $100 billion on the chopping block. So, look, if we can get that, that's a step in the right direction. But what we need to do is exactly what Trump wants to do: get rid of the Department of Education. And there are other departments, the IRS. We just go to a flat tax. You don't need an IRS. There's so many different efficiencies that could be had. In Homeland, we're doing a pilot project in reconciliation that will cut the TSA and automate all the identity checks and the scanning that's at the front, and we'll move those people to the border if they want to do that. But we're gonna create efficiencies. Now, is it what really the max which needs to happen? No, but we can't do that with a 2 or 3 seat majority because, again, and I've made this point before, Democrats vote their ideology. Republicans vote their districts. And and Fitzpatrick out of Pennsylvania, his district is significantly different than mine. My district, Tim, we get to do those conservative votes. But that guy will not get reelected if he does. His electorate, his body, the people who sent him to that office are more Democrat than they are Republican. And so if he votes for those cuts, he's gone, and we lose the majority and it's over. We don't move it. So look, I'd love for us to cut $2 trillion. I think we can do that. I think that the inefficiencies and the crap that's gone on with USAID and all those examples that Elon has brought out are there. But it won't win. We won't get those votes, and so let's cut $800 billion and move the needle.
So how difficult is it? Because I know that you and many other conservatives want to codify the executive orders that Donald Trump, and there's over 100. I've lost count, to be perfectly honest. But
we're approaching 200, I think. Okay,
so how difficult is it with the slim majority in the House to make those legal, to codify those executive orders?
Well, I think a lot of them can be and will be. Not everyone, but I think a lot of, especially the border stuff. We have a very, very good consensus on that piece. So I think you'll see a huge number of them codified.
Are you worried? There's again a lot of rumblings about Republicans, and this is sort of just more of a generic question, but I think it's an important one. And someone such as yourself, you're in touch with conservatives not only in Tennessee but across the country. Are you worried that there are some Republicans and conservatives around the country that are getting a little complacent? We've had some special elections across the country, and the fact of the matter is that Republicans are losing these special elections in Iowa and Pennsylvania. So the Democrats clearly are fired up. And I'm not so sure about the Republicans. And these are really conservative people that are saying this. There's a really important situation going on in Wisconsin as well. So are you getting worried about what's going to happen in the midterm election, sir?
Yeah, well, I'm not so much worried about the midterms because I think that a lot of the sort of, President Trump has gone in and I think it's necessitated a wrecking ball because for years, Republicans have gone to Washington, D.C. and promised to do X, promised to do Y, and then they never build the consensus in the House, and it never gets done. And so President Trump's come in. He's come in with a wrecking ball. There's a little bit of collateral damage. Some of those people are getting rehired. I think all of the turmoil of that, which was necessary, absolutely necessary to get it done, is going to be smoothed out by the midterms, and I'm optimistic for the midterms. But for those specials, I'm very concerned about voter turnout, particularly in Florida. And we have 2 down there that should clearly be Republicans. and one of them certainly will. I think the Panhandle will never elect a Democrat in my lifetime, but down a little further south of Jacksonville in Mike Walls' seat, we're worried about that seat, and it's voter turnout. And you asked the question, is it complacency? I think, yeah, maybe that's the case. It could also be that the candidate. I got to dig into that race a little bit to understand it more, but there are significant many leaders who are concerned about that race right now. We need people to get out and vote. We need to maintain and grow this majority, or this vision won't happen.
One thing you have introduced, it was actually a reintroduction of a bill that you have put in apparently before. This bill went in yesterday, and it seeks to reform prior authorization requirements in Medicare, Medicare Advantage, and Part D prescription drug plans, requiring only specialty board certified physicians to make important decisions about treatment. So, of course, everyone knows, you have a medical background, obviously, as well. So talk a little bit about what that does, sort of in plain speak, if you would, and tell us how that's going to help folks in Tennessee.
Yeah, so patient goes to a doctor. The doctor has 5 options to fix the back issue. The insurance company, or the doctor calls the insurance company to get a prior authorization. The patient suffers while waiting for that prior authorization to be approved. They oftentimes will take, of those 5, the insurance company may say, well, 3 of those we're not going to approve, but you can do this one or that one. And this one and that one are minimally invasive and then prolong care, and the person gets, okay, they try that, the doctor tries that because that's the only thing the insurance company will pay for, and then they try this, and then there's this algorithm that's there to save the money of the insurance company. And it prolongs care to patients, and it's pain, misery, and in some cases death. And so I believe, and I did this in the state Senate too, I believe that if an insurance company is telling a physician that they can't consider 3 of the 5 possible solutions to the person's problem, that is a medical decision. That's a decision that we make a physician go to medical school, residency, and board certification process in order to be able to make that decision for the patient. And some AI algorithm or some, person who's, been at the office for 90 days and got a sheet they're working off of because that's what the insurance company said, is making these decisions. And to me, that's offensive. I think that's wrong. And so a patient and the physician can say, these first 2 things aren't going to work for you. Well, the insurance company, if they're going to tell that doctor no, the person telling that doctor no from now on is going to be a board-certified physician who practices that specialty, and this will force the insurance companies to take the patient into consideration and not their bottom line. And that's the point of it all.
And I'm sure you have more details on your website. Let me ask you very quickly one last, because everybody knows you presided over the impeachment of Alejandro Mayorkas, those hearings. Now we have all these MS-13 and Tren de Aragua gangbangers that are being sent, either back to Venezuela, they're going over to Gitmo, and then eventually El Salvador, so on and so forth. Are you satisfied so far with what President Trump has done with deporting these illegal aliens? Do you want to see more? Tell me what your thought is a couple of months in.
Yeah, I think if it stays like this, we're going to need a bronze statue somewhere of Tom Homan. I mean, that guy he's kicking butt, and they are doing a great job. The judges are the problem in this. They're the choke point in this equation or throughput process. And we'll appeal, and, the president has the authority. They're just woke judges who would rather see criminals on the street in America than they would, cops funded and doing their job. So we'll get past all that. But no, Tom is doing a fantastic job. And I mean, it was 8,000 that crossed, I think last month. The message is out in the world. If you're a criminal, they're going to send you to Gitmo. I mean, that's probably the biggest deterrent of all, right? And so, no, Tom and the president and Kristi Noem are doing a great job.
One last question. I apologize to the producers. I'm running late, but I've got one more question, Congressman. I've got to ask you, since you touched on judges, your thought on impeaching some of these district judges, federal district judges that President Trump wants to see impeached.
Well, being the guy who definitely led the only successful impeachment of a sitting cabinet secretary in the history of the country, I can tell you the process has to be strategically done. And I have not looked at it because that falls under judiciary, and that'll go through Jim Jordan. So I've not personally dug into that. I've got reconciliation. I've got my Pivot Act. I've got, all the other things that are on my agenda pushing forward. I think it could happen, and in some cases probably should happen. I'm going to let them come up with their strategic plan and run that, but I'll whisper in Jim's ear some suggestions on what made it successful for Mayorkas. But yeah, I'd love to see some of these guys gone. Look, there are judges out there. Here's the thing too, and you're going to hear this from my physician background. A doctor can let a patient go, and some harm happens to that patient, and that patient has a right to sue that physician in our country for making a bad decision. But a judge can parole some criminal that goes and kills somebody, and that judge is somehow not liable. I mean, it's time to start holding some of these judges accountable. So, yeah, I hope Jim is very strategic about this, calculates the path forward, and moves and makes an example out of a few of these guys.